I have been a fan of the Monsterverse since the first teaser trailer for Godzilla came out over 10 years ago. And even though the Monsterverse has evolved to lack any semblance of continuity between movies, I still support it, still watch it, still promote it to my friends, because I still think they're extremely fun movies that make it worth going out to the movie theater. I want more Monsterverse movies to be made, and for monster movies in general to see another resurgence in film. All of what I've just said applies to the new Monsterverse show on Apple TV, Monarch: Legacy of Monsters. I'm very happy with the attention the show is getting, as it just shows that the general audience interest in the Monsterverse post-Godzilla vs. Kong is as strong as it's ever been. I binged the whole show ahead of the season finale, and then I watched the season finale when it came out, and with all that being said, the show sucks. And I don't say this to try and convince you to change your mind if you're one of the many people who liked it, and I don't say that to try and snuff out the show's success. And this isn't even about Godzilla only getting 4 minutes of screen time. In fact, I think the time that he did get was used relatively well. I say it because I believe that this is by far the worst that the Monsterverse has to offer. With boring characters, lazy writing, shallow dialogue, flat performances, and an incoherent plot, Monarch: Legacy of Monsters fails to deliver that emotional, grounded human story that it was looking to tell. The story is split into 2 separate timelines. The 1950s story follows 3 early Monarch employees, Lee Shaw, William Randa, and Keiko Miura, as they work hard to prove the existence of Titans and then fight for more funding and resources from the military. Their story follows how these 3 characters come together and also how they clash, as Bill and Keiko are scientists and Shaw is a soldier. Bill and Keiko want to push for the protection and research of Titans, and Shaw is under the command of General Puckett, who is actively trying to kill the Titans, as he believes they are a threat to global security. There's also a small love triangle thing that happens, but it's not done obnoxiously, which looking back is a miracle all things considered. I will say this part of the story is the strongest part of the show, and it sounds interesting on the surface, but unfortunately fails to reach its full potential for reasons we'll get into soon. The other half of the story is set in 2015 in the wake of Godzilla's attack on San Francisco. We follow Kate, Kentaro, and Mei as they investigate the disappearance of Hiroshi Randa, Kate and Kentaro's father. They find out Hiroshi had been keeping separate families in America and Japan, and so our characters end up teaming up with an older Lee Shaw in order to uncover the mystery of Hiroshi Randa's disappearance. This part of the story is the weakest, which is really disappointing because this is the part that has Kurt Russell. There's no time spent establishing why the audience should care about Hiroshi at all. He's never shown to be a loving or caring father to either of his families. He's also never shown being a major asset to Monarch either. So the only reason Hiroshi is relevant at all is because he's Keiko's son and Kate and Kentaro's father. Which I guess could have worked if Kate and Kentaro were not also incredibly boring characters. In fact, I would go to say most of the characters on the show are pretty boring, even for Monsterverse standards. The best characters in the show relative to everybody else are Shaw, Keiko, and Tim. Every other character is wholly uninteresting. Kate and Kentaro are supposed to be the emotional center of half of the entire story, but there's nothing interesting about their characters, other than the fact that their dad, who we also don't care about, was cheating on their families and now he's missing. Mei is just about as boring as Kate and Kentaro, but at least Mei actually contributes to the group with her computer abilities and has actual impact on the story when she betrays the group. Even if that betrayal is a long-winded excuse to flash an Apex Cybernetics logo in our face for 5 seconds. Remind me again why I care about Mei reuniting with her family? Oh, that's right, I don't, because it was never important until right this moment and isn't important after this moment. Every high-up Monarch employee, basically other than Tim, is completely forgettable. They are just plot devices to push the story forward. In fact, that's what most of the supporting cast is. Bill Rand is cool, but he was much more engaging of a character in Skull Island than he is here. And to be honest, the 2 strongest characters in Lee Shaw and Keiko Randa aren't even that great either. They just sit atop this mountain of shit that makes them look great in comparison. The most interesting thing about Lee Shaw is that he's played by Wyatt and Kurt Russell, and Keiko's character is carried by a single scene in the final episode. The performances from the cast unfortunately don't do much to remedy this problem either. It seemed like almost every line was delivered completely flat and without any emotion. The 3 kids basically had the same expression on their face throughout the entire show, no matter what was actually happening to them. And even the seasoned actors we've seen turn in much better performances than what they're giving us here. There are of course a few scenes that stand out as being well acted, but they're too few and far between. But you know what? I don't even blame any of the cast. I think they did the best they could with what they were given, but the dialogue just wasn't doing them any favors. The dialogue in this show is incredibly weak and shallow. Nobody in this show speaks like a human being, which isn't inherently a bad thing. People don't speak like they do in Sorkin movies, but at least that dialogue is snappy and provoking. The dialogue in Monarch is cringy when it's trying to be funny, it's shallow when it's trying to be deep, and a lot of the time it's only there to be expositional or in service to the plot. It comes across as lazy along with the rest of the writing in the show. There's a lot of times no explanation for a lot of the things that happen in the story, and it's also hard to feel suspense or fear because our characters are usually overly competent. There's one point where Shaw, who has no established flight experience in the story, kicks a pilot out of his own plane and takes over in order to land in turbulent weather. Even the monsters are boring. The Frostvark is 10 times cooler than the Ion Dragon, but for some reason the Ion Dragon was chosen to be Godzilla's opponent during the climax of the final episode. When you're committing to tell a human story in the Monsterverse, you need all of these things that Monarch lacks. You need interesting characters, emotional performances, and engaging writing. It should not be this hard to make a Kurt Russell Godzilla show interesting. It really shouldn't. The show could have been really great if they spent more time focusing on the trauma of San Francisco's citizens post-G-Day, the political struggle between scientists and military, and the question of whether or not they should keep the knowledge of Monarch and the Titans hidden from the public. Or even if it tried to add any meaningful continuity to the world building of the Monsterverse that each movie seems to retcon more and more. I'm thinking about doing another video leading up to Godzilla and Kong about the current messy state of the Monsterverse and where I hope the franchise goes from here. Leave an infinity emoji in the comments if you've made it this far in the video, and let me know what you thought of Monarch, whether you agree with what I've said or not. Like the video if you liked the video, and subscribe to stay up to date with all the recent uploads.